Hi everyone, my name is Mary. In today's presentations, I'm going to talk about my project for the 778, and my project is about mediation strategies for word choice in second language writing, a case study of two Chinese language learners at a graduate level. Let's start our presentation today with an example from my student essay. When my student wrote something like, social mobility is prevail among us and it should be encouraged. Otherwise, our society will run in the same mode and same routine forever and become backwater. So as a teacher, I'm wondering why my student used the word backwater there. And from the perspective of a English native speaking teacher, you probably find that the word backwater there is unnatural and sounds a little bit like not clear to you. What does it mean? So I'm wondering, English is just the second language for the students. There must be a reason behind their word choice and behind the way they think about a phenomenon, so that they use English as a tool to describe what they think. So I'm interested in why the student choose that particular word. Is this a mistake? Is this a lexical errors? Or does this reveal to me something about, even the effect of thinking from the first language on the second language? So that example really illustrates the issues in writing that bilingual students face. In the study of Roper Sial and Haklau in 2009, they say that bilingual students constitute an ever-growing proportions in American institute, especially during higher education. But writing still poses a unique challenge for them. And the challenge, what is the challenge? The challenge is not necessarily in the language proficiency, not how much they know English or English grammar in general. But the struggle is how they can articulate their thinking in writing. And socio-cultural theory emerged trying to explain that kind of issues. So they say that, language is linguistic devices, like words, sentences, paragraph, knowledge about how to write an essay is one thing. But when the student comes to the United States and use English to function in their class and write about their content area in sociology, in social sciences, in biology, they also interact with the environment. For example, the professor requirement for the subject, and also even the student need to think how to express their opinion in a kind of rhetoric or rules in writing or organizing the essay structure in English for English communities, readers as well. In other words, it's not just only language alone, it's also involve the materials, like how they use the books, what is their reading strategy so that they can take in the knowledge and then produce the knowledge. And it's also depend on their language behavior, also reflect their psychological artifacts, like when they take out a piece of information in English and then they have to memorize it and reproduce it in English, do they use the first language in the between? Do they translate all the English words into Chinese first and then from Chinese they translate it back to English when they write. So a lot of confounding variables and a lot of interfering elements can be found in the process of second language writing. But little research has been done to demonstrate these procedures, these unique procedures that bilinguals involved when they need to produce a piece of writing in English. So efforts have been made to understand these practices, especially in writing, and involve the factors from the environment, like their social, their cultural background, their historical backgrounds, and social, cultural, and historical surroundings. So I want to contribute to that line of research by using the social cultural framework to investigate the word choice, the word uses, how the bilingual learner can manage to choose to select an appropriate word in a context, or if the word is translated from their first language thinking, but when it comes to second language, do they use any materials or any psychological process in order to make it more familiar with the target readers, which are English native speakers? So Lentov in 2000 study state that students are capable of using all resources. They know what are available resources that can equip, that can assist their learning, including person, tools, activities, and also can take advantage of their social and cultural environment, even if in a new environment in English speaking countries. In other studies, how students use words, how students mediate their writing in a second language, also say that those students can take advantage of code switching. They can recruit any language that is available to them to their advantage, so that they can understand the materials and they can produce their thinking, their thought. In some other studies, they also mention that students use dialogue and conversation to facilitate their second language acquisitions. So by group discussion or by talking with the professor, actually it will help the students to produce the language. And last but not least, technology. Technology plays a crucial role in giving, in offering and providing a lot of resources for the students, so the student can get access to dictionaries, to corpus-based search when they do writing. And sometimes the words that they see in those resources, they accumulate those words and then try to recycle those words in their writing as well. So mediation strategies among second language learners are diverse, there's a variety of them. But the thing is, how do students use them? So those mediation strategies are not static. They vary. The skills, the proficiency, or the regularity that the student use those mediation strategy depend on external factors in academic environment, such as the type of writing task in their study and the years of study in the United States. For example, if students are staying in the United States for a long time, they will be active and less shy when asking for help from the writing center or going to talk with the professor or friends. But the people who just, are newcomers, they don't use this kind of mediation strategy. Or when the student need to write an essay or research, the vocab, the words that they produce, they have to think about it a lot and think deeply about it. And maybe they use more dictionaries when they write, compared with the writing task when it's just like a narrative or storytelling. Second, the high skill and low skill language learners. So if the learners have been trained, have received training for using or taking advantage of resources while writing, they will diversify their strategies. And they know, or they can evaluate, oh, this is an appropriate word and this is not an appropriate word. Or what we used to refer as, like pragmatics, competence. So the student not just only know the language itself, but know how to use the language appropriately. So from that literature review, I want to position my study in Landhoff 2002 framework. Basically, he says that all the mediation strategies can be categorized into 3 subcategories. First is the self-monitor strategies or inner speech, where the student recruit any psychological mental processes when they deal with language during their writing. So conversation, discussion within themselves, how they navigate their thoughts, that psychological processes is a category of mediation strategy. The second is social mediated tools, where students direct themselves to seek help from the environment, like from their community, neighbors, friends, tutors, writing tutors, in order to improve the quality of their lexical production. And lastly, the tools mediated strategy, where students use computers, laptops, dictionary, or authentic materials like newspaper online in order to upgrade their vocab abilities. So in my study, I want to look into what kinds of actions or tools in those 3 categories do 2 bilingual learners report to have used when they are engaged in writing activities. And how do selected mediated actions help them to select an appropriate word while composing? So these 2 guiding questions guide my study. Methods. So the participant, because it's a case study, I follow with 2 graduate Chinese English bilingual students, and they are doing a 2-year master degree program in the TESOL at a Northeastern University in the United States. And they are now participating in the same class called Academic Writing Discourse. It's a general class that all international students must take when they come to the USA, regardless of the majors they are in. However, as a university admission requirement, they need to submit their scores for language proficiency. And these 2 students that I selected, they have the similar score, the overall for 4 skill, and also similar score in their writing section, which is about 27 or 26 and 27 points over 30 in TOEFL IBT. So their proficiency can be classified as advanced learners. And the class of academic writing discourse for international students is taught by an American-born professor, and they meet 3 times a week for 2 hours. And so I'm interested in their production. So I use their midterm project. It is a take-home argumentative essay, and I analyze their vocab, their word usage in that essay. So it is like a 6 and 7 page paper. And the essay topic asks the student opinion about social mobility and its importance to the society. So they basically have those characteristics in common, but they have a very different background in second language socio-cultural experience. One of them have been staying, like in the last semester of their master program, and then she has been staying in the United States for over 6 years. So she took her bachelor degree in the United States, very familiar with the norms, the cultural norms of the English speaking community here. And why the other, she has just arrived and she has stayed in the United States for some months, like for 6 months for her study, and this is her very first semester in the United States. However, like both of them have the bachelor degree in the English major, but one completed the bachelor degree in China, and the other one completed the English major degree in English in America. So for the data collection, I have the 15-minute interview about their background in the second language writing, the relationship between the first language use and the second language use, how they describe, are there any connection, do they use translation a lot, and then that can be a great opportunity for me to look into some strategies that they use when they learn new English vocab, and the procedure, like the step-by-step, how they can choose a word in the English essay. And then each student come back to the class and attended the class session when the peer review was conducted for enhancing their essay draft for the midterm. They have like a peer review so that they can revise the draft before they hand it in. So I asked them to highlight the words and the phrases where professors and their peers refer as problematic or needs revising or inappropriate, and then submitted a copy of that feedback to me. That is the time that I schedule the second interview, which is a stimulated recall interview. It's just 2 days later. So it's very intensive data collection period. So the first interview, go back to class, highlighting the words that need revising, and then think about it when they at home, and then come back to meet me, and I just carry out stimulated recall. I ask them, why do you choose this particular words in the first place, and what do you do to revise it? So it's kind of like let them to remind them about the procedure that they has taken to revise those words. So I listen and I note down the mediation process that they use, and try to see what do they think are the issues with the words. If they don't think it's an issue, then I will try to say, why do you think it's not an issue? And they will explain to me why they choose that word. And so I have the transcript from 2 interviews. So I've coded the transcript according to the framework of Lantoff with the 3 categories. So it is mainly like framework coded within the categories that I extract from Lantoff. And then the next step is I follow the open coding and acido coding. It means like I see what can be some new subcategories that the data that emerge from my own data, and then I try to see how it can fit, how those new categories are consistent throughout the transcript and how they fit into the framework that I have chosen. If it is not consistency, if the code not reliable, then I just discard them. If it is appropriate and justified, then I will just fit it in. And that is the last step. It's called selective coding process. And here is, I have the lexical strategy, and I have three categories from Landtop. As you can see, the self-monitor strategies, social resources, and the tools. And for self-monitors, under each category are the subcategories that emerge from my own data. For example, in the self-monitor process, I see that from my data, sometimes the student refer to thinking as thinking activity as itself. So I categorize the mediation strategy as their conceptualizing phase, as a conceptualizing strategies. Like it's just in their thought. They don't produce it, they don't let it out. And then the next is when they tell me, oh, I write it on the paper. So I count it at strategies that they take when they formulate the word, when they actually produce the word. Also, self-monitors strategies also involve some conversation that they have within themselves. For example, they say, oh, I think I should imitate the word phrase of my American friends. So I count it as the self-monitor process that they take. And so it's self-guessing. Sometimes they have the conversation to evaluate whether it's a good word or not, and I categorize it as self-guessing or imitation. Similarly, in social resources, from my data, like both of them use teacher and professor feedback, and also like classmate and friends for help with the word selection. And for the tools, I have my students, they use my subjects, they use mobile apps, they use Google when they want to search for a word, look up for a word in English, and even TV shows. That's very interesting that I watch the TV shows and it actually helps for their writing as well. And I also use the Venn diagram in order to specify those categories and strategies I mentioned, but in each case. So you can see that there are some strategies that are overlapping and can be found for both language learner, but some would just refer to one particular learners. So the yellow part is the overlapping part. The orange represent the first case, Ning. So Ning is the one who has been staying in the United States for a long time, and the other has just stayed for a short period of time. So you can see that for Wen, the one who just stayed here for a short time, besides those strategies that she practiced, actually she mentions a lot about the imitation process. She has a lot of conversation and dialogue within herself and try to idolize the word choice and the word use of American friends studying in the same class with her. So I just figured it out that that is the strategies only Wen use. Vice versa, so we have Nin, and Nin is the only one among two of them. This is the only one mentioned the strategies that she used bilingual dictionary on mobile apps a lot. With Wen, she's used more like Google translation or like internet based, but for Ning, it's the mobile phone that help her. And she's the unique mediation strategy that she uses is also translate, but translate from second language, from English back to back to Chinese, not from Chinese to English. So it's very interesting, like why she used second language as the main tool when she wrote her essay, and then she want to remember how it is used, translated it back to Chinese to remember. But in Wen, no, she's basically used translation from Chinese to English. So this is something interesting. So I look more into the frequencies of each strategies, and now just include the major strategies that they demonstrate among all of them. So the first case is Ning. I see that most of the time when it comes to decide if it is an appropriate word to use, Ning tend to visualize. So she takes a step back and visualize and conceptualize, thinking a lot about, okay, this is the word meaning in English, but how to use it. Let me give you a demonstration. So for example, she wrote something like, with social mobility, people won't be locked into a small space that will never change. So in my mind, social mobility refers to the image of a tall building with many floors, and everyone is climbing up to the top floor, and each floor have the people of the same social class. If you're like poor people, you can only afford to go to a small school and meet classmates from the same situation, so you're on the same floor in the building. But then if you feel like you have all people from that class, so it's a small space. So I imagine about that and how you can meet the people from that space. So in her imagination, the word social mobility in Chinese culture, in Chinese way of thinking, is more like a building. And that's why she have the image of the building. And that's why she used the word lock in the small space, the phrase in her essay. But my friends did not understand the image. So maybe the image is different in America. So I tried to ask myself what's an American imagine, and she said maybe a ladder. And you can see when it comes to social mobility, metaphorical meaning, in your mind, you think more like the structure of a ladder. So you have the social ladder and you climb up. So that's how American writers will write the image. That's kind of like a norms of thinkings here. So in order to use the word appropriately, she takes a step back and really like compare the image, the mental representation of the concept into cultures to see the difference and to adjust the way that she wrote. So I mentioned like her use of the first, the context of use of the first culture, and that interfere a lot, and that affect her word choice. So on one hand, her word selection is correct to her. So she don't think it's a mistake because actually it's what she knows and what she thinks and what she is familiar about. But on the other hand, it becomes an error or can be classified as error because it's so absurd and so strange. If an English native speaking instructor or an English native speaker read the papers, right? So, for example, in this situation, she wants to express someone's desire for power and money. So she say that in my memory, the Chinese people compare the goals are money and power, and so she always used the word chase after money and power, chase after money and power, which is the idiom they usually use in China. It tracing trees Jew. But it happened to be a correct word choice decision. In English, it's also the same. So you will use the chase as well. So it's in some situation, retrieving the context of you in the first culture can be helpful in the second culture as well. And in some situation, having a friends to edit the word choice, the word selections can be also a strategy that Ning used in order to upgrade her vocab usage. So she let the classmate, American classmate, she said, to correct and help her with the word choice. And it works because after they added the commands, she reads through all of them and see like what I did wrong. Not necessarily like, but the thing that very interesting here is in some situations she didn't listen to the commands because it's not exactly what she said. So for example, her original idea is like this, but when it comes to the reader think of a different way, and so they suggested a different wording for her idea. But when it came back to her, she said, no, that's not what I meant from the beginning. So she tried to establish, create a very interesting opportunity for them and for her to discuss her ideas using English with friends and classmates, and that's in general helpful for her writing. And finally, she used bilingual dictionary, and she uses because it has the voice recognition process, and she feel like it's not a word by word translation, but it's more like a paraphrase or synthesize. They summarize and process her idea as a whole, not a word by word translation, because she say word by word translation may be not the optimal way. Sometimes you cannot translate word by word, and sometimes it's wrong if you translate word by word. So a bilingual dictionary would be helpful at that time. So she say it a whole sentence. The voice recognition recognize that and translate the whole passage or the whole sentence into English. In one case, she used different strategies. So mainly she used like translation method from the first language to the second. So for example, she said, at that specific point, I cannot get my thought together. I guess I use like literal translation from Chinese, because bring out in Chinese would fit in Thai like make it comes again. So in her essay, she say something like bring out new opportunities. So in Chinese, Thai, bring, lai, it means again, come out again. So it literally bring out in English to English. Again, sometimes these translation help, and she can use it as the mediation strategies as she just described. But whether it's right or wrong, it's really a natural wording for native speakers. Another strategy that she usually uses is a combined use of corpus from the Google search engines and Oxford Bilingual English-Chinese Dictionary. But the way that she did is different than Ning. So she always think in Chinese and write in Chinese first and search for the words in Chinese version. So she's input the words in the Google search engine in Chinese language, and then it pop up the translation in English, and she copy the English phrases from the corpus from the search result, enter it into the dictionary, And so the dictionary translate that English word back to Chinese. And she has a kind of like a notebook, and she wrote the definition of the words in Chinese with English and then translation in Chinese. But it's a very like roundabout process. But she said that she keep the vocab notebook, and it's a strategy for her to try to recycle those words. However, though I think it can accumulate her word knowledge, it's not necessarily improve her abilities to use it appropriately. And another is imitation. And she thinks that imitation is the best strategy. So she tried to ask herself some question like, why did this classmate, and she's an American writer, use this phrase? So she has something related to her identity. So she identified as a non-native speaker. So she's categorized her American classmate as native speakers. And so they can be the norm. They shall be my model. And wow, I like the way that she wrote, and I need to copy the phrase and kind of like save it and recycle it for the next post. So to a certain extent, it's a way for her to reuse the words and in the context that she think of by herself. So it can improve her familiarity with the wording in American setting. So in my case study, it's a small case study. So from my findings, I can still see that my findings align with the three general categories proposed by Lentoff. Furthermore, the two learners engage themselves in varied forms of mediation while selecting second language words in varied way, which construct the subcategories that I just explained. But I also figure out that if we take a closer look into each case, the mediation strategies have many similarities and overlappings between the two cases, but in contrast, they have many distinctive characteristics and distinctive strategy as well. So I'm thinking, where does the distinction come from? Maybe because it's a case study, so we cannot draw any like statistical significant causal connections. But I think it's justified to say that in order to understand why they use the strategy so differently, we need to think about the background. We need to think about their personality. Maybe Ning is more open, more extroverted than Wen. So she find it's very convenient to ask for help from American friends. We also need to take into the consideration contextual factors and the background knowledge in second language learning. So maybe Ning teachers ask her to use monolingual dictionary or mobile apps from the very beginning, so she find very comfortable, while Wen is more like, as Wen described in the data, is more bookish way of using words. So I guess she always have the feeling like, oh, I need to double check with the dictionary rather than to be creative with the word meaning. And also it's interesting to see whether it's individual thought or language creativity, or is really like the Chinese people think that way. What if these two learners not coming from the same region but different region? Do they represent different ways of thinking in Chinese as well, and that affect their strategies that they use? They don't use visualizing a lot, conceptualizing or imagining a lot, but they use more like imitation or asking for help from the professor. So those findings help me to confirm the statement that mediation strategies play a very important role. Understand the strategies they use we can know like why they come up with some particular behavior, some kind of wording, and the process, understand the process of a bilingual learners when they have to come to those extra steps compared with an American students. Is very helpful to propose assistance to help them when they, especially in the writing procedures. And also, there's assumption that the L2 acquisition can be free from method of L1 induced selective attention by some means of focus on form that is socially provided and that recruit the learner explicit conscious processing, like Lentop say. So, in Ning's situation, she always put herself in the shoes of native speakers, and she have the knowledge, she stay curious about what they think, and she knows that language is not just about language. It's more like you depart from your first language, which is crowded, which is fossilized. You depart from those fossilized ways of thinking, and you stay curious about the ways of thinking of the American community, and then she talked to them. That is her strategy. She talked to them to learn that. But in one case, it's more like, okay, observe, imitate, rather than come and ask, oh, why? Oh, I'm curious. Why in America they say social ladder? They don't say social building. They don't look at social mobility as a building, but they look at it as a ladder. And so L2 learner knowledge, background, and second language learning experience, it's a complex phenomenon. And so understanding the background elements are very critical, like I say. So come back to the first examples. Right now I can, look back and ask one, oh, why do you use the backwater? So I don't underline that words as a lexical errors. But the more important question I think we shall ask is, why do you come up with that idea? I want to know that. So I hope that my presentation can give you information about the study, the final project study that I do for this class. And I hope to receive your feedback. And good luck with the rest of your semester. Thank you so much for your listening.